everyone. Happy Monday. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we have a special guest talking about HPV. So, HPV is a human papillomavirus. It's the most common sexually transmitted condition infection in the United States, and it's estimated about 80 million people in the US are currently infected with HPV. And nearly half of these infections occur in teens and young adults aged 15 to 24. And each year, approximately 13 million new infections occur in the US. HPV is also linked to several types of cancers, including cervical, anal, oval, vaginal, penile, and oropharyngeal cancers. So, in fact, most of all cervical cancer cases are caused by HPV. And that's where we're so glad to be chatting on IG Live today with Kristina Rasmussen, the HPV naturopath. So during this live, we're going to discuss why HPV is so common, how to enhance your immune system to fight off HPV, and how to handle the stress of an HPV diagnosis and more. So I saw. Here you are. Hello. Hi, Christina.
Hi, Jenna. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this.
Yeah, you're absolutely you're welcome. It's a pleasure. I always love when we can reach more people to talk about this topic because it's not talked about enough.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You.
Thank you. So tell us a little bit about yourself, like how you became an HPV naturopath.
Uh, so I've been helping people with their health for over decades. But really what brought me to the niche of HPV was my own HPV journey, where I just realized that there is not a lot of support and the options that are offered by the doctors are just not great. So as a naturopath, I really wanted to help more women in similar situations because I just saw that there is a big need for it. And in the beginning, I was like more spread out, open to doing other things and doing other niches. But I was like, no, I really have to go into this very specific. I got so much positive feedback from women on the internet, like that they were so grateful for having this information. So I think it just came gradually, and at some point, I just decided it was time to just do that.
Yes, we thought it's like super wonderful because you see like many naturopaths focusing on nutrition, focusing on other aspects like autoimmune, but like HPV is like you only hear like a sort of a Western, like a typical traditional medical approach to HPV. Get your Pap smear, take your antiviral if there, and then get your vaccines if you're young. But there's like no other support whatsoever. So this is
I
like
know you're
so
right.
special.
Yeah. And if you find support, there are like personal accounts and very subjective information, and sometimes also information that is very far out there, which can be a bit maybe dangerous or just not grounded in science. Even if we're holistic here, it's still science based. So yeah, that kind of like solid information that you can rely on and that is grounded in some sort of foundational of science. I think that's really the great combination. Yeah.
You kind of answered my next question, but I'm still gonna ask, like, for those who don't know what naturopathy is, could you explain what's naturopathy and how can it be really beneficial for someone with HPV?
So what I say, what naturopath is, if people ask me, is that it's I call it national medicine because that people can just understand that very easily. So it's really looking at a person as a whole, as holistic, what we call it. So we don't just take and treat a symptom. We take the symptoms and look at them, well, where they come from, what are their connections, and what's going on in the body that's causing these triggers. So we look at the causes of things and get to the bottom of the reasons, and then we with herbs and nutrients, and there are many other things that you can use, help people, help the body fight whatever it is or help the body become more strong so the body can heal itself. That's really what naturopathy is all about.
And how could it be beneficial for someone with HPV?
Well, because HPV is a virus, and why do we have viruses? Because our immune system somehow doesn't pick up on them or is not able to fight them. So for HPV, we have to look at, well, what's causing this immune dysfunction, and so the immune system is not able to pick up on the virus and get rid of it because our immune system really should be able to do this. So I call them triggers. What are your HPV triggers? And usually that's a combination of things. But finding and really solving these triggers helps your body be able to fight the virus on its own. Whereas if you just take things to boost your immune system and antiviral things, you can get lots of supplements out there. What happens as soon as you stop taking them? Well, the immune system is no better off than it was before. So it's really about finding those triggers and strengthening your body, which has so many other benefits, right?
Yes. So HPV is a virus, like, but why is it so prevalent, especially in women?
It's prevalent in the whole population, really. Just men don't really show any symptoms. They rarely get cancer from it. There's a but here in a moment. Uh, uh, and women just get when they get infected with the virus, they have a much higher risk of developing cervical dysplasia. So we have in place these tests that we can proactively check for. So I think that's just there's more awareness around it. It's not that many more women than men have it. It's just there's more awareness around it. Actually, in the U.S., that's what I was going to say. The but is in the US, there's now more men with anal cancer from HPV than there are women with cervical cancer from HPV. So it's very prevailing in men as well. First of all, it's just not talked about, and we don't have the same. Uh, what is the word when you have these tests to prevent something like the checkups and things? There's just not that in place. We don't have these tests for men, but it's very much there for everyone. And it's a virus that's just like the herpes virus. We just so many of us have it, but doesn't mean that it's going to break out. Doesn't mean that it's going to cause issues.
Right. So you mentioned cancer. So like how does HPV play a role in like development of cancer?
It can play a role in developing cancer in several places, but how it works is the virus finds a place if it's throat, vaginal, cervix, or anal. And if the conditions are right, it stays there. It gets nice and cozy. And when it stays there for long enough, yeah, it kind of like wants to expand. It wants to have a better home. So it just starts invading our cells. And then what happens is the cells start, what do you call it, like dividing differently and abnormally. And that's what we call cancers when the cells start dividing abnormally. So it's the virus that's causing the cells to become rogue because then it has a better environment for thriving. That's really what happens. And the longer we leave it there, the further into the tissue these abnormal cells they penetrate. And once we reach what we call the lymphatic layer of our skin, it can spread. And that's what we call it cancer. Yeah.
So it's really important for people to recognize if they actually have HPV or not, and if it's active HPV and really do something about it.
Yeah, I guess we're lucky in the sense that we actually can test for this because there's so many things going on in our body all the time. Toxins that you spoke about, environmental toxins that cause these rogue cells or dysfunctional cell division in our body all the time. But the body takes care of it and we don't really notice it. But here, at least, we can test for it. We can do something about it beforehand. But yes, it is one of the things that we can prevent, and we should use that. Yeah.
What are some signs of a HPV then?
I really like this question because there are no signs of HPV. I mean, if you have genital warts, it's obvious, but this is not usually not the strains that can cause cervical dysplasia or cancer. So warts, I guess, for some strains, but for the other strains, there aren't really any symptoms. So um, I've talked to a lot of women, and some claim to maybe have some pelvic pain, or there can sometimes be abnormal bleeding or discharge, or as I said, pain or pain upon sex. Maybe I missed a few, but usually these are not caused by the virus itself, but rather by the environment that the virus creates. So the virus can change the vaginal environment. It can actually change your pH of the vagina, which then again has an impact of on all these things. Or it's because you already have these issues that are causing these symptoms that the virus can actually thrive. So it's usually not because of the virus itself. So I would say that there aren't really any symptoms. And somebody comes to me and say they have bleeding or pelvic pain or stuff. I mean, apart from really progressed cancer, it just comes from other things.
You actually had a really great post about that. And then you're saying that, not all symptoms means HPV. So
Exactly.
let's talk about that. What are some symptoms of HPV that could be like, or so-called other symptoms, could it be other conditions that people should be aware of?
Exactly. So, of course, we do have, if it has progressed to cancer, absolutely. But often it can be PMS symptoms or any hormonal issues. A lot of it is also due to vaginal microbiome issues. So, people who have BV or candida or any other STDs as well, right? There are other STDs that can cause these symptoms. So, it's also really important to do these screening. Oh, that was the word I was looking before screening. Yes. So to do other screening tests as well for other STDs. If you have one, you're much more likely to have more as well. Maybe because of your sexual practices or just because your body's not able to get rid of them. So I think that's the main ones really. Maybe was there anything else you remember? But I think there's
No, this is good because a friend of mine who's a microbiome expert, she once told me that for gut microbiome we only know the tip of the iceberg. There's so many species, everything out there. We don't know enough when it comes to the gut, but when it comes to vaginal microbiome, we actually know so much more, and the science is really solid. So I just like want to comment on
the because the vaginal microbiome is not as diverse as the gut microbiome, right? There's only very few species of bacteria that are supposed to be there, which makes it a lot easier to understand. But yeah, there's so much research on the gut microbiome, and every year there's more research coming out, which is really fascinating and coffee.
and
Yeah.
complicated. So I was just thinking, like, as a screening test, people who are suspecting they have these symptoms, and that's also in addition to, checking HPV, they can also get like have a check on their like a vaginal microbiome,
Yeah.
because that could also help with ease out the symptom and then figure out the next steps.
Yeah. So if anybody comes to me with symptoms of vaginal microbiome imbalances or history of BV, candida, UTIs, or any other vaginal issues, I always recommend a vaginal microbiome test because we can look at the specifics and target the treatment much better. And a lot of these things they need medical treatment on top of other things. But it can make things it can speed up the results if we combine it with the specific antibiotics necessary for certain bacteria or whatever it is that's going on.
That's wonderful.
But a lot of women have PV, get antibiotics, and it doesn't help because it doesn't work on the level. You need, yeah.
So is HPV permanent?
Yeah. Yeah. So the research is not really clear what happens once we become HPV negative, but the consensus at the moment is that once you become HPV negative, you develop certain antibodies, like you would do for any other virus or that the immune system combats or fights. So you have these antibodies, and they're gonna be active for a certain amount of time. Nobody knows how long. So if you get a reinfection, with the same strain. Of course, you can get reinfected with lots of strains, but if it's the same strain of the HPV virus that you get again, the consensus is not really sure if you have been re-exposed and then you just didn't have any immunity for it anymore, or whether it's reactivation of the viruses in the body. Um, as far as I have understood, it's not really clear, but it seems to be that the virus stays dormant in the body. And so that's why it's so important to work on these triggers so you become HPV negative forever and you make sure your immune system is strong enough to get rid of it if it should come again, or just to keep it dormant.
So to reiterate, if you initially got diagnosed with HPV and if you had a negative results, that doesn't mean you completely have no HPV anymore. It could be just HPV is dormant. That's why you need to figure out your triggers and not letting it activate again.
Exactly. And that's the same with the herpes virus, right? Most of us had the herpes virus in us, but not all of us would ever get an outbreak. So there are certain conditions that have to be there over a longer period of time before, like, the water glass overflows and the body can't deal with it, and the virus is opportunistic and then takes advantage of that.
Which has a lot to do with your immune system. So, how can you help your immune system to help reduce this trigger and help with HPV levels?
Yeah, that is the multi-million dollar question, isn't it? So anything that causes immune dysfunction is the answer. Anything that causes inflammation, anything that and that's really, as I say, it's these triggers that I always talk about. And I have nailed it down to 5 main triggers, which is anything that's stress and nervous system related, anything that's digestive system related, leaky gut, microbiome related, anything that has to do with your vaginal microbiome, anything that has to do with your hormones, and anything that has to do with autoimmune things, Lyme disease, environmental toxins, or environmental toxin exposures. Because these are all going to cause some sort of inflammation, which causes the immune system to be really busy elsewhere. And then it doesn't have the capacity to look after this little virus that's busy elsewhere, because there's bigger fires to put out, basically.
Yeah. So I feel like if you're able to minimize these triggers, so not only you help with HPV, you probably help with herpes virus or any other dormant things you have and just your general wellness.
Exactly. And I think that's the beauty of it's a lifelong thing, right? You work on it, and the first thing people start feeling is just more relaxed. That's really the first thing, is like, oh, I feel less stress. Like, and then comes the, oh, I have better sleep, or oh, my digestion is better, or and it's just really interesting because that nervous system is the first one to respond. And there's so many benefits, and it's great that we get these benefits, because and it keeps us motivated to continue the journey. But it is a journey. It's not there's no end to it, because it's your life. But it's about creating a healthy life, because it's about creating awareness to avoid all sorts of diseases, all our modern diseases. Yeah, so we want to be healthy all over.
Yeah. So people can get a little bit anxious, when they find out they had HPV diagnosis. So do you have any tips for dealing with this anxiety when often HPV diagnosed?
There's a lot of anxiety involved. I think the first thing I like to say is fear stands for false evidence appearing real. So that's the first thing. It's like, get your facts straight. What are you dealing with? What are your actual risks? Right? Everybody's like, oh, cancer, cancer, cancer. And there's really a lot of fear. It's like, okay, what are actually your risks of getting cancer? Just breaking it down, the facts, the knowledge really calms that initial overwhelm or fear. Because the internet it blows up the fear. Yeah. So that's, I think, the first thing is to get a strategy in place. And that just really, like, when you have a plan and a strategy, it feels like you regain some sort of control. That helps a lot. Yeah.
So when it comes to if you have a diagnosis, like what would you tell someone who's worried about, telling their partner about their HPV diagnosis?
Uh, there's not one answer here. There's a lot of factors involved, a lot of different religions, a lot of different partnerships. So I think every case has to be dealt with different sensitivity.
Mhm.
Um, but as an overall rule, I think you should be honest with your partner. And I also think that having HPV should not be a burden for the one person to carry because it isn't a one
Yep.
person thing. It comes from somewhere. If it's a long term partner, chances are it comes from that partner. If it's a short term partner, it can come from others as well. But uh, I think it's really important to have that conversation to spread the awareness and to share the knowledge because if we don't talk about these things,
Yep.
how are we going to become more open about it? Yeah.
Yeah.
How are we going to break down the stigmas and the old patterns of thinking if we don't talk about it?
Yeah. I mean, there's a, technical aspect of how to approach these, and then there's also the whole psychological perspective. And I think like people can tend to get super overwhelmed. And I think that's where you come in. So how can someone work with you um, to, managing their HPV, or whether it's like a new diagnosis or, have been having it for a while?
Yeah. So I provide two different programs to work with me. One is a completely tailored one-on-one program, which is a 6 months where I basically do all the work and provide the support on what to do and what to take. And the other one is more of a knowledge-based approach where there's online learning. It's a HPV membership. It's called. It's also 6 months. And then you basically learn everything there is, the things we've been talking about now in Dex. And then there is that group support as well, which is great because you also hear other women's stories and we just had a call today. So we just share information and they put together their own treatment plan. And depending on what women need different things. So I love having those two different options. Just because some just need that accountability of one-on-one and others are more curious about learning, and then you have those who have really severe dysplasia and need fast results, so they also need the fast lane, and others have more time. So depending on what your needs are, maybe you have complex diseases or other illnesses, then you need more tailored support. So there are these two options that I provide, and I'm also launching a book soon which is going to talk about all things HPE basically to break it down. So at the moment, there's the two courses, and soon there's going to be the book as well, which offers an entry point to learning more about the subject.
Please let us know when your book launches, so we'll make sure we promote, because I think everyone needs this information.
Yes,
And
it's not easy to do a book because it's very hard to know when to stop.
mm,
Yeah. So yeah, but it's gonna be soon. It's gonna be in a few weeks. At least that's the plan. So yeah, I'll definitely keep everybody informed. But I mean, I'm on Instagram. I answer lots of messages on Instagram every day and DMs, and I have free discovery calls for women who would like to talk more about which option would be best for them. And I have a website. There's links on my Instagram as well where you can see the different options. So yeah.
wonderful. So if people want to reach out, they can check out your website or DM you through Instagram.
Exactly.
That's wonderful. Anything else you'd like to share?
I think the most important if you're diagnosed with HPV is not to wait and see, not to just don't do nothing. Whatever you do, don't do nothing. Always do something to help your body. Even if you're like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna wait and see if it goes away. That's great. But you still have to do something to help your body. I mean, don't just do passive. I think that is the main message that I like to give to women. And most of the women that come to me are also interested in doing that, right? But for anybody out there with HPV, really do some research and yeah, make just eat healthier. That already helps a lot.
And if you have that diagnosis, you feel lost, please follow Kristina and DM her and then book a free discovery call. That would be the first step. I would totally do that.
Of course, Jenna, how can I forget? I'm an altruist. I want to help people. I don't even think about this. But of course, reach out to me. But I'm just trying to say there are, whatever you choose to do, just don't do nothing. But of course, yes. And when you look for support, look for qualified support, such as myself, of course. Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge today. And please keep us posted regarding that book, and I will make sure we promote.
Yes, I will. Thank you so much for having me, Jenna.
Have a good day.
Bye.